2009 to talk about all the acquisitions. Browns Dam was one of them. And in that regard, we did move ahead with the eminent domain to obtain the property that we needed. We had no problems with any of the other purchases that we needed, temporary easements that we needed, or permanent easements that we needed. The only two hold-ups that we had in this corridor for this project was the Sweeney property and the Takana Shores, which was Browns Dam. So the New York State DOT suggested a solution to the problem, and that would be if the town is now supporting the taking of the property for the removal of the trees, and the report does identify a non-conforming site distance that should be addressed under this project, then the solution was to, for the tree limbs that are overhanging the county property, trim them back to the county line, and for those trees that are on the county property, to remove those trees, because those are the trees that we have control over. Let me just hand out for the board.
Thank you.
I'll just walk you through what we have. The top is the Google map of the area. You can see Mountain View is actually labeled as Old County Route 27A, but the horizontal curve is very noticeable, and you can see the tree line right on the inside of that horizontal curve. This particular tree line, if you turn to the second page, has a power pole right in the middle of it, and you'll see that on some later survey drawings that I have for you. There's a power pole in the middle of the tree line. There's power lines that go through the tree line. There's telephone lines that go through the tree line. And there's a large section of the tree line that has already been removed by the utility company. The site distance problem with this tree line is shown on the third and fourth. The third sheet, and Linda, this goes to your question about the site distance.
Thank you.
The third sheet shows the existing site distance. I'll just get my glasses out. And the problem is with vehicles that are on County Route 7A that wish to turn left into Mountain View Court, having the site distance to stop and make that maneuver with oncoming traffic going north. The site distance for a vehicle that's stopped on 7A wanting to turn into Mountain View Court is 100 meters. That's on the third drawing. The fourth drawing is going to show the needed site distance. Again, I have on that drawing the existing of 100 meters, and then for a passenger car, a single truck, and a combination truck. So the site distance that we need is between 125 and 170 meters, dependent upon the vehicle that's on County Route 7A going north to have the slapping site distance to stop in the event that a vehicle traveling south makes a left-hand turn into Mountain View Court. Now you'll also see on these maps, I talked about the utility pole that's in the center of the tree line. You can see the utility line. It's marked as OU, utility line. And the utility line goes right through the middle of the tree line, together with the utility pole that is also right in the middle of the tree line. The worst site distance is actually from Miss Sweeney's driveway. Miss Sweeney pulling out of her driveway probably has less than 50 meters of site distance, and that's if the vehicle is almost out to the white line before it decides to make that maneuver, whether left or right. In fact, the site distance is so poor on that horizontal curve that the first 10 trees closest to Miss Sweeney's driveway have had the limbs cut off 4 feet up, and you'll see that if you travel down the road and take a look at those trees. The solution that we were offering to Ms. Sweeney was to remove this tree line, thereby eliminating any conflict with the utility poles that are in it, the utility lines that are in it, and also the site distance situation that it creates for Boney Republic and Route 7A. And then replant that tree line back from her property so that she continued to have the aesthetics of a tree line in the front of her property. Or if she wished to have a fence, we would put up a fence or any other kind of screening that she perhaps would have proposed to the county. Unfortunate that it came to this situation, but we did end up at a stalemate. We weren't able to move forward with any type of further negotiation with the landowner for the purchase of the property. So what we had to do was then continue with the project so that we didn't miss deadlines, address the situation the best that we could, so that we would make so that the situation would not worsen over time. And in doing so, the decision then was that any trees on the county property, and you can also make out the property lines, and you'll see that it's basically split 50-50 or 60-40, perhaps to the county, as to the number of trees that are on the county property versus the landowner's property. Any trees that are on the county property would be taken down, and any limbs that are overhanging the county property would be trimmed back to the property line. And that's the way that the project is proceeding right now.
A couple of questions. I know you've talked about this offer that was made to Ms. Winchell-Sweeney. My understanding that there was a reluctant but and verbal acceptance of that agreement. Is that true?
The only
and granted, if it's not in writing, it doesn't count. But
the only thing that was close to acceptance, I could think of 2 situations that would have been close to acceptance. One was on the heels of the meeting that we had, which was when Ms. Sweeney requested the replacement of the trees with 30-foot tall trees. And then we priced out those trees, and it was just cost prohibitive. It was over $100,000 to do it with 30-foot trees. That's almost a 3-story building with a 30-foot tree. The other situation that comes to mind that was close to acceptance, and I did send some very positive emails back to Ms. Sweeney on that, was when the supervisor had a conversation with Ms. Sweeney, and then the supervisor relayed that conversation to me, that he had a very positive conversation with Ms. Sweeney, that she was open and receptive to a fence line, some trees, something like that. I then sent an email back to Ms. Sweeney, very positive, offering to basically provide for her whatever she wanted on her property for that screening. And the email that I got back then was that the supervisor doesn't represent me, and I had no agreement with the supervisor.
I was copied on that series of emails, and I believe that, and I'm sure it wasn't intentional, Reggie, but you sort of misrepresented, I think, what Susan was looking for. So that's a miscommunication.
So those are the only 2.
My second question is, and did you talk about in November of 10 wrapping up these easement questions with Taconic Shores and Browns Dam, and the decision was to go forward? In terms of the time frame, when was the next contact made with Ms. Winchell-Sweeney that these trees were going to be pruned and certain trees were going to be removed? Because we became aware of this via email, that all of a sudden stuff was happening, and she seemed to not be aware that this was what was going to happen.
That's correct. We met with New York State DOT in November of 2009. In November of 2009, this is the direction that the project took under the advisement of New York State DOT, so that we could continue with the project, make the deadline, and not sacrifice the project being defunded. The correspondence that came to Ms. Sweeney was from Dean Knox probably about a week ago.
A week ago. That's a pretty big gap in time, and I think that's part of what's the problem here, is there's been a lack of communication. I completely understand the necessity. We all appreciate the fact that this bridge needs to be done. It's a public safety issue. We certainly don't want it to be defunded, but there's been, the county has dropped the ball, in my opinion,
Well,
in regards to
let me-
communication.
I'll ask you, and also Ms.
Janet, please sit down.
I will do anything that the town wants. If you want a tree line put back there, I can put a tree line. If you want a fence, I can put a fence. I can't get in a situation, though, where the project comes to a stop and I lose all the funding. I need to keep the project going. I worked on this for well over a year, trying to negotiate the purchase and replacement of the screening with the landowners. I came up with nothing. My options were, in the best interest of the project, find a way to keep it going so we maintain the funding, or stop the project and not be able to do anything. So if you want me to do something with screening, if you want a fence on the property, I'm still open to working with the community. This is your community. I'm coming into your community doing this project. I respect that, but I have to keep the project going. And if you can work with me to keep the project going, I'll work with you to give you whatever you want.
All right, well, the bottom line is this, and I've got to say, first of all, I got to stick up for the county on this one. Quite frankly, the tree...
That's okay, Reg, I'm here for the town, so...
You know, the bottom line is, the county could have been the real bad guys here and just said, the trees on our property are coming down, and not told anybody. They could have just walked... No, hear me out. They could have just walked in.
Yeah, eminent domain is an excellent
It's
leverage device. It is. Yes, it is.
No, it's not even eminent domain. I'm talking about the trees that are actually on
the
county
county
property. They can cut them, even if there wasn't a project, they could cut them.
Correct, but in
Okay.
the interest of good governance and
And Dave-
communication, there has been a serious gap between when the county made a decision to proceed and when they actually started, and there's been no communication.
I think
with
in the
Ms.
end,
Winchell-Sweeney.
the ultimate thing here for us all to do is to come to some sort of compromise. What is the county willing to do in regards to the trees? If you take the trees down, what size trees are you willing to put in? Are you willing to put in 8 to 10 foot trees? Are you willing to put in 12 to 14 foot trees? Are you willing to put in 16 foot trees? You know, and I know in the instance of public safety and the sight distance, I'm just curious how the county came to saying that intersection was a dangerous intersection. Did they go by the amount of accidents that were there? Did they go by a flat, you know?
Yeah,
how did the county?
Yeah,
How
I'm
did the
curious
county come
about
to
that
that?
also. I see a formula here, but I don't see any traffic analysis or studies.
You know, that was
back
my
that up.
question. I mean, I don't want to see the project stopped, but what I want to see is I want to see a compromise here. I do believe that there was a lack of correspondence between both parties, and I understand your end and I understand Ms. Sweeney's end, but I believe that we should be able to come to some type of resolution without both parties having to spend an awful lot of money. And I believe that the county has the assets to do it, and I think we should be able to get it done by the end of this meeting. I mean, going back and forth here, the bottom line is, let's put some trees on the property, let's get it straightened out.
Well, hold on, let's ask Ms. Sweeney. Ms. Sweeney, would you be agreeable to either replanting trees or something else on your property?
I am not being represented by an attorney, but I have the assurance from the county through her that they won't be cutting trees or doing any pruning until we've had a chance to meet with the county and reach some mutual agreement.
Is that correct, Dave? You aware of that?
I have no knowledge of that.
All right, then she obviously has been in touch with the county attorney, I would imagine, then, Rob Fitzsimmons?
Okay.
All right, then I think,
That sort of leaves us out of it.
That leaves us out of it.
Hopefully you guys can come to a resolution.
I hope you can come to a resolution.